Thank you so much. Thank you, Emily's List, for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with a fellow legislator, an incredibly inspiring person to me, Representative Byers. Stephanie, how are you? It's good to see you.
It's good seeing you too, Sarah. Thank you.
How's everything going for you? I love your background.
Thank you very much. First time out on being a legislator, it's been different, but things are going well, and we're kind of in our downtime between our veto session and our sine die. So,
well, that's wonderful. It was so wonderful for me as a candidate watching you as a candidate run, and to share our victories on the same night was just really fantastic. And I think it's always incredible for us to be able to be in the same space together. I know anytime you and Danica or I have the opportunity to be with our fellow out trans legislators, I think we all sort of marvel at the fact that there's not just one of us, now there's 7 of us, and a growing number of out trans legislators getting elected across the country in red states and blue states and purple states. And to be able to be together, to see one another, talk with one another, share priorities, share experiences, it's, I think for me, incredibly inspiring, because it's such a profound reflection of the progress that we've made as a community. I started my journey running for office 2 years ago, well before COVID hit, after almost a decade in LGBTQ advocacy. And I think, I decided to run in part because I was hopeful from all of the change that I had seen and experienced in my work and in my life, but also because I saw that really at the end of the day, politics is a place where you can make the most amount of change for the most number of people in the most number of ways possible. And as I was fighting for equality for the LGBTQ community, I saw that in order to bring about the change that we need as a community, in order to ensure equality for every single person, that doesn't just mean fighting for marriage equality and non-discrimination protections. It means fighting for good paying jobs, safe and quality public schools for every kid, healthcare that is affordable and available for everyone. And so I decided to run for office with that knowledge and with that hope that change is possible, and that state legislatures are really the place where the rubber meets the road and where you can make that significant change for your communities and your neighbors. And, for me, that hope only grew running for office, out on the doors, having conversations with neighbors. And I'm curious sort of what your experience was like and what your journey to running for office was like, because I think while we were elected the same year, our journeys to running for office were a little bit different.
Quite a bit of difference. I'm 58 years old, and I didn't start living as my authentic self until 2014. And so my career has been one of advocacy, in that I'm an educator. I'm a retired public school teacher. I taught band and orchestra. And it wasn't too long ago that I was advocating for the importance of arts in public schools, and advocating for the importance of adequate funding for public schools. And then when I began living my life authentically, having taught at the largest high school in the state of Kansas for 24 years, that transitioned into the advocacy that we needed for the trans community as well. And here in Kansas, we've had difficulty funding our public schools at an adequate level, and our Constitution here requires we do so. And so being in office allows me not only to have a voice for the LGBTQ community, but also a voice for public schools, a voice of an educator who saw the differences that funding makes to the students, to their families, and to the teachers in that classroom, and what an impact that has. Also, I have 2 grown adult children, and I watch them struggle, because here in Kansas, we haven't expanded Medicaid like they have in other places. And my oldest son and his family fell in that bubble. And so I began to advocate as well about expanding Medicaid here in Kansas, and how that would make a difference, especially for those folks that hit in that bubble, to be able to get that insurance they need to have proper health care. And of course, then with the campaign starting and COVID hitting, and the experience of having layoffs in the economy, we also began looking at what we can do to shore up those safety nets, so that we can make sure that every Kansan has every opportunity available to them.
I love that. And it reminds me that each of us bring a multitude of perspectives to the table, and you're bringing that experience as an educator, as a Native American trans legislator. I came to this office as an advocate, someone who had fought for legislative change here in Delaware and nationally, and now have the opportunity of being a trans state senator in Delaware. And I'm very mindful as I'm engaging in conversations on a lot of issues, including LGBTQ equality, but also education and healthcare and paid leave. I just introduced a paid leave bill here in Delaware. How additive our perspectives are to the conversation, how critical it is to have a diversity of voices and perspectives around the table. And I always say that diversity in government isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, because you can't craft effective solutions for diverse constituencies if you don't have the full diversity of those communities represented at the table. That's true in technology and business. It's certainly true in public policy and government. And I've already seen how different conversations become when there's a trans person around the table. And my hope is that over time, we're going to see more trans folks of different backgrounds, more trans folks of color, more trans folks, more trans men, more non-binary folks run for office and win, because it really does add to the conversation. I assume you've had a similar experience bringing your perspective to the Kansas legislature.
Oh, absolutely. With my election, I joined two other openly LGBT legislators that were reelected in 2020. And so that we have the three of us there as our Rainbow Caucus to stand and speak out, sometimes against very nasty things. We've had the anti-transgender bills, both in sports and medicine, introduced in Kansas and had the opportunity to speak out against that. But also with my election, I joined another Native American woman who was already elected here as in her reelection, and an additional Native American woman who was elected for the first time along with me. And with the changes that have taken place in sovereignty within our U.S. Supreme Court and how they view tribal sovereignty, that brings another perspective to it as well, so that we can look and address those issues from our unique cultural perspectives and for our unique identity as well. And I appreciate you sharing those impacts that you've had there in Delaware, because I mean sometimes it seems a little different because we're so far away from each other. When we're on this side of the Mississippi and you're over on that side, but at the same time we see those overlaps and those similarities coming through. I am grateful so much that when I was running for office to have Emily's List be a part of what I did, to have that sponsorship, to have that push out there, to help get that and to make sure that we do have more people that are like us, because as the saying is, it's hard to be it when you can't see it. And so our job is not just to represent those communities, but we're also holding those doors open for the next generation to come in and follow behind us.
That's right. And I think you talked about some of the anti-trans measures that have been introduced in Kansas and so many other states, and it reinforces how much work there is to do before we've opened enough hearts and changed enough minds to not only defeat those bills in every state, but to move equality forward for everyone in our community nationwide. And that means more trans women running, and it means more trans women running and winning everywhere. And I know for me as a candidate, I didn't just face challenges as a trans woman, I faced challenges as a woman and a young person. And to have Emily's List there providing that support and that guidance as I navigated both unique, but also in many ways similar waters to what other trans women and other women have writ large have experienced running for office, it was so critical having Emily's List there. And I think even though we're seeing more trans candidates run and win, I think a lot of trans candidates, when they initially put their hat in the ring, they're met with skepticism. And so to have Emily's List there validating the electability of trans women is such a powerful force in ensuring that when trans women run, they're taken seriously, and that when they run, they win. And so I'm incredibly grateful to Emily's List. I'm grateful that they were so helpful to both of us that we could spend this time together as two out trans legislators. And Stephanie, it's just always a pleasure to spend some time with you.
And it's always a pleasure to spend time with you as well. I look forward to the time we can actually see each other in person.
I can't wait. See ya.
See you later.